Good afternoon, and thank you for watching some information with regards to the BTEC Enterprise qualification for Year 11 studying in 2023-24 academic year. My name's Claire Adams and I am one of the two teachers for BTEC Enterprise alongside Chris Neal, who teaches one of the groups also. So a little bit of information about the qualification as it stands. So there are three components. We're currently in the process of doing the component 2 element in class, which is an exam board set assignment but internally assessed and moderated. And then the information I'm going to provide to you now is about the component 3 marketing and finance, which is the examined unit, 2-hour exam paper that the students will sit in May time as part of the terminal assessment for this qualification. So component 1 and 2 have been sat in school, and component 3 is the exam unit, and this will be tested for the students in their mock examination that's happening end of November, December. So the component 3, as I say, will come at the end of the course and covers some of the elements that I have added on here. It's what we call a synoptic assessment, so it comes at the very end of the course and is a exam board marked piece of work. It's going to be around marketing and budgeting, and each question is related to a scenario that the students need to read at the beginning of the exam paper, and they will have 2 extended response questions, which I'll give you an example at the end, worth 6 marks. So around marketing, some of the content that we're going to be looking at will be around e-commerce, so buying online, things that affect business reputations, good to be looking at and discussing things that happen in the news. Pricing strategies, how some companies will undercut prices or have high-end pricing. Product portfolios, how, for example, Apple may have a number of items now in their product range. Promotional methods, is that going to be incentives like buy one get one free or loyalty incentives? And then segmentation, so how do companies target their audience to sell their product to, thinking maybe about age, geographical location, socio-economic group, in order to be able to think about how the market is segmented in order to make the best of the marketing budget that an enterprise has. Finance side of this looks at company assets and how they have liabilities against those, so often costs and risks. We look at balance sheets and income statements, so that generally is sort of basic maths, and I'll show you a couple of questions in a moment. Thinking about how we can price products so that we know what the break-even point of a sales would be in terms of making sure that a business is viable and isn't going to make a loss. Thinking about how that flows into the budgets and forecasting for your business to be successful. Looking at financial statements at the end of the year and how the accuracy of those is really important for investors perhaps, or even for customers and lenders. Invoicing and how that process comes about for businesses, and thinking about ways in which you can increase your sales revenue, maybe by lowering your costs or indeed increasing your sales price. How customers can pay for things, so cash, as we know, is dwindling now, and card payments and even contactless payments are really taking over. So what are the benefits of those things? And then how do companies raise finance, whether that be from shareholders or loans from banks, or crowdfunding as well. Now we see a lot more in order to get some of those startups off the ground. So how can your child revise for that? Well, there are a few ways they can go about it. We've got the excellent revision guide that is available to purchase through the school, or indeed other platforms you can buy that through, but it's a basis of all the knowledge that they need to have for the exam. I would suggest that you'd probably get a high level 2 pass, maybe a merit, level 2 merit if you knew everything in the book. It potentially doesn't give you that depth of knowledge around context to go beyond. That's where the notes from class will really help with that, but it's a really good grounding for students to have that knowledge, and it helps you as parents test the students against the content you might not be familiar with yourself, so it can give you a little bit of a guide to the sorts of things and answers that are needed. Online support is also available in terms of Know It All Ninja. This is a quiz and content platform that the students used between year 10 and 11 as part of their bridging work. Sadly, not all students completed the bridging work, so they will have gaps in their knowledge from not having done that, but it's still open and they can still go back to do that. That was fairly evident for some through the baseline assessment we did at the start of this academic year. So do encourage your child to go and use Know It All in Ninja. It is uploaded onto their Teams page. It's there for them to use, and actually all of the topics covered in the first two lists under marketing and finance have been opened up for the students from now until May, so they can dip in and out of there, and that's free for them to use. Finally, their class notebooks are really key as well. They've been writing comprehensive notes all through year 10 and will continue to do so in year 11. So those books are invaluable to them. They are important to have at home for revision, but even more important to have in school to keep up those notes as we go through the remainder of the topic content and onto the revision processes that we're going to have. We'll also be looking at past paper questions that they'll have into their books as well for you to look at, and we'll continue to complete sort of baseline tests, and I've got some questions from the most recent baseline for you to see in a moment. So those class notebooks are really important. Here's an example of one of the questions that generally is the first in the exam paper off the back of a scenario, in this case around JSG Limited growers. And it asks them to add the financial documents into the flow diagram here in the order in which they come, invoice, receipt and statement of accounts being the last one that they would have. And it's really important the students just commit that to memory in order for them to be able to get those simple, easy first 3 marks that can really build the confidence for them. And here you can see the way in which the mark scheme operates to give the 3 marks for invoice, receipt and statement of accounts. Very simple and easy to achieve. Here's another example of a calculation, so using the maths part of Enterprise really, so making sure the student has got a calculator with them for this exam is going to be really key. This question is just asking for the student to show the workings as well in order to get the 2 marks. So can we work out what the total costs for the business are? So we would be looking to add together the fixed cost for the year of 3,700, calculating that by 540 jobs at £10 each, 5,400, giving us a total of 9,100. And you can see how the mark scheme here is awarding the 2 marks for that in terms of how the calculation has been shown by the student. Again, this is an example of some of the business documentation that the students need to just understand. Again, it's fairly simple maths in terms of using the calculations, making sure to get the marks that they are showing it to 2 decimal places in the pence all the way through what they're doing. So doing the calculation to work out 6 times £64.50, subtotal of those 2 added together, then working out what 5% discount of that, and then remembering to minus the discount from the subtotal to get the total. That's where the trick can come sometimes, so that we can ensure that the calculations are right. I'll often say to the students they need to do a visual check on what do they think that 10% of the number looks like, so that they can at least check that the calculator is churning out what they're expecting. But again, 4 fairly easy marks, I would say, in terms of being able to mark hunt through the paper to get the maximum that they can. Finally, just to give you an example of a 6 marker, this is C here, is evaluating which of these 2 public relation methods Jasmina should use to attract business customers. Should she either take part in an exhibition attended by local enterprises or sponsor a local event such as a gardening competition? And the key is to make sure that there is a conclusion that recommends which public relations method would be best for her to do. So my advice to the students is always to look at the advantage for the exhibition and the disadvantage to her, then go on to the advantage of the gardening competition and the disadvantage of that, and then the final paragraph would be the conclusion. Now, if students needed to do this as bullet points, so that there were bullet points of the pros and the cons for both of those, and then a statement of conclusion, that would really work well for them and get them very close to those 6 marks, if not all the marks. So in terms of how you get credited for the marks, you would get it if you demonstrated a knowledge and understanding of the material using the indicative content and level descriptors below. So thinking about how they use the scenario, how they use the wider context of business in that, but thinking about the advantages of attending the local exhibition, you can see that there, the disadvantages of that, and they would only need to have one, maximum two of those advantages, again for the disadvantages, and then what about the advantage for the sponsored local event and the disadvantage, and then that key paragraph or sentence that is the conclusion. I think she should do this because, I think she should do this because. That is the key response there for those 6-mark questions. So top tips would be, you need to read the scenario really carefully for the exam paper before you start the actual questions. 2 hours is a long time and they will have plenty of it left, so that they can take the time to do the reading. Relate everything back to the scenario throughout. Lots of it is just math, so use the calculator and try all calculations to see what looks right. Don't leave anything blank and use your workings because you might get marks. Have a guest, mostly businesses, general knowledge, and an educated guest wouldn't be too far off in most instances. And if you need to use the bullet points for your 6 markers to get the advantages and disadvantages down before the conclusion, then do that. Don't be put off by the fact that you've got to write a lot of writing, because you don't. You can just cover off the necessary points that you have considered, and that will at least get you, I'm sure, half of the marks, if not a little bit more. So that is the content really of the Component 3 examination that will happen in the main June series, and the questions that will be part of it. Mr. Neil and myself are contactable using the email addresses on the screen there, so if you've got any questions off the back of this, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will obviously look forward to seeing you at Parents' Evening in the not too distant future, and we wish our students all very well for the revision that they are doing in advance of their mock exam, and then of course the final exam. Thanks very much for your time for watching, and look forward to hearing from you and seeing you at Parents' Evening.